Is your Yongqing surrounded and only hitting one enemy at a time? Are you guys tired of losing your buffs with a tick of damage? And most importantly, do you guys like big, booty, delicious damage? Well, it's time for an upgrade. And today we're going to take a look at the top 5 best teams for Jingliu, and let's get started with the first team in our list. Onto our first team, we have the Jingliu Hypercarry team. This will be the main team to use, as it focuses on buffing Jingliu as much as we can, using certain characters that make her hit insane numbers. Jingliu benefits from being a Hypercarry, as she is sort of a nuke character that does have a slight downtime in her damage, and you want to take advantage of this by gathering up energy, filling up all of your party members' ultimates to prepare for the next rotation. Now specifically, this team will use Jingliu, Bronya, Pela, and a sustain unit. This could be Luocha or Fushuan to get the best results. Bronya is going to be here as she provides massive crit damage and attack buffs to Jingliu, and most importantly, giving her multiple turns, as Jingliu wants to fill her syzygy stacks as fast as possible to enter her buff state, and giving her multiple turns is going to make this a faster process, with a smaller downtime. A character that is pretty much a top 3 support for Jingliu will be Pela. She is here for her AoE defense shred and quick ultimate regeneration, able to get her ult back quite fast. Something else that is important is her E4, being able to reduce the ice resistance of enemies when she uses her skill. And this is a powerful damage buff. And the great thing, in the current event, at the time of this video, we do get a free Pela, so that could be a nice Eidolon to get. So let's talk about the pros. This team has strong single target, powerful AoE damage, especially with Pela giving defense shreds to multiple enemies, and where the MLC is quite AoE reliant, Pela will be a better option than Silverwolf in this terms. In other situations where it's single target based, Silverwolf will be the better option. I also think any sustain unit will be a good choice, and this is because the team does have extra skill points, so you won't have to rely solely on your abundance character's ultimate to heal your team, and you're going to be able to sacrifice a skill point and it won't ruin your rotations. Something that is really prevalent in this team is ice weakness break. The smaller enemies, if they have ice weakness, won't be able to have a turn and will usually die, as Jingliu's multipliers for her adjacent damage is pretty good. And additionally, Pela is going to be there to break ice weakness as well with her ultimate and skill, making this a very nice freeze team. Some cons I have for this team is when you are in Jingliu's downtime, you are at your most vulnerable state. You could potentially get comboed by multiple enemies and or a one-shot from a boss if you don't have defensive characters. But this is such a reach, as the weaknesses of this team are really small. And the first time I used this team in the MOC, even with no prior experience playing Jingliu, I was able to do it in the first try. This is such a strong team, but let's look at a more free-to-play option. So on to the next team, we're going to take a look at a more free-to-play option with all 4-star units. But don't be fooled, guys. This team is actually almost as strong as the first team. So introducing this team, we have Tingyun, Pela again, and either Lynx or Natasha. We're going to have high uptime on Jingliu's ultimate, as Tingyun is giving that 50 energy off the rip, and we're going to have a lot more skill points to work with, as both Tingyun and Pela are going to be point positive. A thing I really like about this team compared to the first team is not only is it accessible, but it's a bit easier to play in my opinion, because you don't have to work with balancing that skill point consumption between all of your party members, unlike the first team. But there are trade-offs, as you won't get multiple turns from Bronya. Apart from that, Tingyun's buff Benediction lasts 3 turns, and her damage buff from her ultimate lasts 2 turns. Pela's debuff also lasts 2 turns, and in that time frame we want to deal the most damage possible. So how do we do this? First, we want a fast Tingyun and a fast Pela, and then we want a slower Jingliu using attack boots. And we want to start off the battle with a Tingyun ult and then skill. This way we can get Jingliu's ultimate immediately, but don't use it yet. We want to use Pela's skill and then ult to apply her debuffs and her E4 if you have it, and now it's going to be Jingliu's turn. Something important here is we are able to get all 3 stacks of syzygy immediately if we apply her ult, and now we can use her enhanced skill with all the damage buffs and debuffs present, and then you're going to rinse and repeat. This is a pretty broken team so far. So let's talk about the pros. This is a very free-to-play accessible team. There's no 5 stars used in this showcase. This is an E0S0, so it's a very low investment with high rewards. Another thing I like again in this case, you can make it so that there's not really a huge downtime on Jingliu's damage. Allow her to go into the buff state more quickly. This is because Tingyun gives that extra energy that Jingliu needs, and that's just going to be making her rotations more efficient, making up for the extra turn that you lose when you don't have Bronya. Again, something that is powerful is you are able to have more skill points in the bank because all of these units are SP positive. I would recommend trying to heal your team with the extra skill points or using Payla's skill more often and gaining back your abundance character's ultimate as fast as possible. Even with this free-to-play variation, you're still getting really good single target. There's still that powerful AoE, and the survivability is a bit better because you have extra SPs in the bank again. But what are the cons? It really relies on how powerful your sustain character is. Natasha can still work, but she's gonna need to go overtime on the heals, as Jingliu does steal some health from your party members, and cleansing a character one at a time may be bad with the MOC boss, as she gets rid of a quarter of your health to all of your teammates, and this lasts for a while. So Natasha with no defensive buffs to your team makes you a bit more vulnerable to combos, and the best free-to-play option is going to be Lynx, having that AoE cleanse. But remember that your Jingliu is going to be targeted more. Overall, this is such a good team, and I'm glad the free-to-play variation still makes Jingliu hit hard. On to our next team, we have Mono Ice. This team solely focuses on breaking the ice weakness of enemies as fast as possible while dealing ice damage. This is more of a niche team, but in the right circumstances, I can see this team being quite strong against a single boss and smaller enemies around it. The team consists of Jingliu, Payla, Silverwolf, and Japard. All of these characters focus on one big enemy, and every single character is going to be able to deal ice damage, with Silverwolf having really good quantum weakness break. This is a flexible team able to kill any boss, as Silverwolf can inflict that ice weakness. If you want to switch it up though, Fushwan is going to be a good switch, as she does have better AoE weakness break while still keeping the team alive, and honestly better than Japard for survivability. Something that's really handy is that double defense shred. It's powerful for tankier enemies, and since we have Payla, we're going to be able to hit that defense shred to all enemies, while Silverwolf extends the single target department for Jingliu. In this team, we want a fast Payla as well as our Silverwolf, and we also want a faster Jingliu, having upwards of 134 speed. This is because we're not going to have any extra turns or alt regens, so we're going to need to be able to come back in the action order more faster. So let's talk about the pros. This team has decent single target, decent AoE damage, and the shield from Japard is pretty handy for surviving those tricky situations. Weakness break against single targets is going to be very fast, and if you're going against enemies like the Ebon Deer, this team is going to be able to farm that boss as fast as possible. Some weaknesses are damage uptime. The main issue with this team is it's relying on Jingliu to be the hypercarry without giving her any additional utilities, such as the extra turns or giving energy to help with her stacks. This results in the team feeling a bit clunky, and when Jingliu is out of her stacks and isn't in her buff form, the team is at its most vulnerable state. While I wouldn't put this team in the highest of tier lists, it can still be a powerhouse when you want to beat the Ebon Deer in world level 7, but that is what's holding the team back, being quite niche. Again, this is such a decent team, and try it out if you have access to it. So something that I've been saying through this list is low SP consumption, as Jingliu herself uses less skill points than most DPSs. So what if we took it a step further, using a similar character but a DPS? Introducing the duo DPS team, including Jingliu Blade, Bronya, and a sustain. Now I just want to mention Bronya can be switched by Payla or Tingyun. All of these characters work really well. So this team works because both Blade and Jingliu are SP neutral, and it makes it so we can have a steady flow of SP consumption. But for starters, I want to tell you guys this team hits hard, and Blade and Jingliu surprisingly have a unique interaction. You know when Blade takes damage and he gets a stack? But when Jingliu consumes health, it actually counts as Blade taking damage. So he's able to gain a stack whenever Jingliu uses her enhanced skill. That's pretty damn cool. And it just gives that extra boost of damage uptime from Blade. How this team will work is going to be a bit more complicated. So to start off, we want a fast abundance character with speed boots. And here I like using a faster Bronya because I also want her to regen SP alongside alongside our Abundance character. We can do this as her passive advances her action with a basic attack. Something that we have here in this showcase is a tank Blade with HP. This is so Blade is able to soak up a ton of damage and is mainly focusing on being a sub DPS, and he's going to be the slowest character in your party. In this showcase, Blade is actually running HP boots. So some tips about this team is don't use Bronya's skill on Blade, as he doesn't really need it, and it's okay if he doesn't have his enhanced basic attack for a few turns. We mainly want to buff up Jingliu and have a high uptime on her buff state. In this way, we can do some pretty cool stuff. As soon as Jingliu uses her enhanced skill, Blade is already at 2 stacks, and if we enhance his basic attack and use it, he's going to be at 4 stacks. And the thing is, we're guaranteed to get hit here, as the boss is going to do an AoE attack and Blade is just going to kill everything with his counter attack. And here we dump out ultimates to kill the Ascended in 1 turn. And we're going to enter the next fight with 1 stack of Syzygy. That's going to be huge. And this next interaction is actually pretty cheesy. We basically deal a ton of front-loaded damage at the start. This floor is also really nice for Blade because he also gains stacks from dot damage present in this fight. So moving on, let's talk about the pros. This team has so much damage in all areas. We have Blade doing massive AoE damage, and then a highly buffed up Jingliu doing insane AoE and single target damage. Both of these characters combined make such a big powerhouse. A strength that I want to mention is the synergy between all of the characters in this team. Everyone fits like a glove. Jingliu is able to again proc Blade stacks. Bronya is making Jingliu get maximum potential with her enhanced basic attack, and either Luocha or Lynx is going to be able to heal the team reliably. If you guys do have a tanky Blade rather than the standard Blade, this team is going to have strong survivability. He's going to get his stacks back so fast and just survive all of the enemy hits. Let's talk about the cons though. And the first one out of the way is it's pretty expensive. Not only do you have to have 4 5-stars or 3 5-stars, everyone needs to be geared up pretty specifically. So it's not going to be a team that you can just pick up and go. I tried playing this team with Natasha and Bailu, and it doesn't really work well. And the only other sustain unit is going to be Lynx or Fushuan. But other than that, I really like this team. And it looks like we may have a dual DPS meta coming our way. The next team in this list is something that I was just playing around, and it ended up being really good for this MOC 10, and I wanted to give this team more attention. This is another dual DPS team, including Jingliu and Clara. Since MOC 10 has Fizz weakness, Clara is a powerful choice for this floor. The rest of the team includes Bronya and Lynx / Luocha. This team works well as Clara can be point positive, as she doesn't really need to use her skill to gain back energy efficiently, and we can rely on her basic attacks as well as her getting hit for energy. I use Luocha in this showcase, but I believe Lynx is a much better choice as it will taunt enemies to Clara much better. Lynx will also taunt Jingliu to be attacked, and to counter this, we want Clara's ult to be coming back as fast as possible. Running speed boots on her would suffice for this, and this is going to bring up Clara's taunt value a good amount higher. Some switches on this team, you could also run Tingyun, but she also has a high taunt value. That's why you see Tingyun always getting hit, and it might mess up the rotations not hitting Clara, ending up with less damage. Also, if you find Jingliu getting hit more often, I would recommend placing her beside Clara, so if there are AoE attacks, they're both going to get hit. And playing this team is extremely simple. It's essentially a dialed down Blade Jingliu rotation, but this time we are wanting Bronya to be slower, so Jingliu gets her ult first, or another variation is we want a faster Jingliu with 134 speed, and this will work just fine as well. So let's talk about the pros. This team has very strong AoE damage. Damage uptime is very good as there are 2 damage sources, both of them being quite powerful on their own. Strong survivability as Clara is a much tankier unit. It can sustain herself, and it allows us to pay more attention to Jingliu's health. The great thing about this team is it's easy to manage skill points, much easier than the other teams on this list, as Clara, while her skill is useful, it's definitely more for shield break than personal damage, but you can use it at certain times when you want more energy. Some weaknesses about this team is it may not hit as hard as the other team. As we can see here, we are clearing it a bit slower. Even though there is decent damage coming from Jingliu and Clara, it hits slightly less harder, making it so sometimes it ruins Jingliu Jingliu's rotations, as you will need to consume another stack of syzygy. It's a give or take, depending on how strong your Jingliu's damage is. Other than that though, I gotta say, this team is sick and heavily underrated, and could work in the Swarm endgame. Give it a try guys, I recommend this team. That's gonna be it for the top 5 best Jingliu teams. Make sure you guys go to twitch.tv/KevJu so you can possibly receive your free express supply. I'm gonna be heading them out in the marble race at the start of the next stream, and I'll see you guys in the next top 5 or 10. See you then, gamers.